Pavarotti Cipollini has always been one of the most prominent names in cycling in the 90s and the 2000s. A sprinter capable of generating all kinds of sensations amongst the fans, especially the Italians, who were accustomed to his shows in the Giro d'Italia. However, the French public had not yet fallen in love with him until 1999, when he put on one of the greatest exhibitions of the epocha, winning 4 consecutive stages in the Tour de France. Do you want to know how he did it? Without further ado, let the show begin. Mario Cipollini had long ceased to be a classicist with great speed, to become a pure sprinter, for many the fastest on the planet. Perhaps his change came after the 1993 Tour de France, where he first wore the leader's yellow jersey of the Tour with the MG team after 2 stage victories. This fame and popularity changed his mentality, and not even his hard crash in the 1994 Vuelta a España kept him from his perspective. He had to be number 1 in the sprints, and by the way, to be number 1 performing a show on the roads. After several seasons in the ranks of Mercatone Uno, Cipollini took the big leap forward when he signed for the Saeco team, where he began to surprise the world with his impressive trio of Italian giants that left him just a few meters from victory. Even his nickname, the Lion King, was in vogue at the time, and he quickly became such a cycling icon that the commercial Peter Sagan of a few years ago looked like a mere toy in comparison to the sprinter from Lucca. By 1999, Super Mario was already 32 years old, and as he had been doing in recent seasons, he focused his season on the 2 grand tours that motivated him the most, the Giro d'Italia and the Tour de France. In the Corsa Rosa, Cipollini sang La Donna Immobile in the best possible way, with 4 stage wins in the edition in which one of his supposed best friends, Marco Pantani, was expelled for his high hematocrit levels. Weeks later, he obtained 2 victories in the Volta a Catalunya, a competition that he even blamed for the death of the Spanish sprinter Manuel San Roma in one of his stage wins, and the Saeco rider had to be the protagonist, no other option. But his stealth preparation had concluded in the best possible way, and now came a second goal of the year, the Tour de France, where undoubtedly he would leave everyone speechless. Curiously, in the first sprint of that race, Cipollini did not even fight for the stage win. Perhaps his main load of gasoline had not yet arrived, because not even the Epoca press could explain how the Saeco rider did not even participate in the sprint, won in a surprising way by a 30-year-old Estonian legend, Jan Kursipuu of Casino, one of the few cyclists of his time who has never been linked to any doping scandals. Although, being from a team full of drug traffickers and dopers, it's difficult to draw any conclusions from this about this curious character. On the following day, the famous Passage de Gois that eliminated the Swiss Alex Zülle from any possibility of winning against Lance Armstrong, Cipollini wanted to get into the fight for the stage and to silence Kursipuu, but it was the Belgian of Mapei Quickstep, Tom Steels, who overtook them both and achieved the first of his 3 stage wins in that tour of renovation, the Tour of Redemption, in which the same old guys were winning again. The 3rd stage was again on flat terrain, in a tour full of these type of days, and again Cipollini failed. Steels took another win, proving that Patrick Lefevre's boys have been betting their Tour de France money on these types of stages for decades now. Il Bello could only finish 10th, and the press were already calling his round of France a failure. But like the great Luciano in his duet with Eros Ramazzotti, Cipollini started singing Se bastasse una canzone and said bastasse Gia. The Saeco show would start at that very moment. The next stage, with a finish in Blois, looked like it was going to be a quiet one, with a relaxed Cipollini at the start, making his classic jokes and banter. Nothing could have been further from the truth. With a favourable wind, and with all the aura of EPO-free renewal of the 1998 Tour of Shame, the clean peloton, led by Lance Armstrong, went full throttle through the plains of western France in pursuit of the day's escapees. They were going so fast that to this day it remains the fastest Tour de France stage of all time. The resolution of the stage was clear. The Psycho trio, with Gian Matteo Fagnini and Mario Scirea, Cipollini's two paid thugs in that Tour de France, left the road clean and tidy for their leader to crush Eric Zabel and the rest of the sprinters in that first and necessary triumph. What no one knew at the time was that the image would be repeated over the next 3 days. On the following day in Amiens, it was the Belgian Tom Steels who said in the press that Pavarotti would have to prove that he was above his green jersey as the best sprinter so far in that edition. The show was epic, with the Psychos placing Cipollini so well on the long finishing straight that not even the EPO and growth hormone doped Belgian was able to come back, despite his spectacular top speed in those days. Super Mario was in crescendo, and the next day luck would even align with the Italian star. That day, Tom Steels wanted revenge on Psycho, and he knew that he had to place himself better on the finishing straight in Maubeuge. He did, but he took his elbow out for a ride and pushed Lampre's checkman Jans Varada, a boost that allowed him to better follow Cipollini's wheel and overtake him at the last moment with a kidney punch. But the judges acted. They ruled Steele's manoeuvre invalid and disqualified him, making Cipollini the winner again that day, and that was now 3 in a row. The next day, the finish in Thionville, and again Fagnini put his leader in the best possible position for the last flat finish of the first week. Eric Zabel got confused in the sprint and almost caused a crash that Tom Steels had to dodge at the last moment. Without his two strongest rivals, Cipollini won with absolute ease, allowing time for his classic look back, and he took second overall on the green points jersey. A milestone he would never again conquer in his career, even though, as he said it was his dream to arrive in Paris. In fact, he came within one stage win of the all-time record for consecutive victories, which dated back, mind you, to 1909. This alone made Cipollini a much more popular and well-known man around the world, and was a turning point in his revolutionary marketing for what was still the 20th century. Obviously, he couldn't do anything in the Met's long time trial, in which Lance Armstrong shocked the planet by crushing all his rivals, but he left us with a spectacular look for the time trial by wearing green bib shorts identical to the jersey that he was wearing. Cannondale was the first brand to sport the full colour kits that are so popular in cycling today, and Cipollini was the main star of the Psycho team. But it was the next day that Cipollini really became the Pavarotti of great performances. He knew that he didn't have much chance of winning many more stages because the mountains were coming, and he decided to dress up as nothing less than an emperor, since that day was nothing less than Julius Caesar's birthday. With a white toga and a crown of golden laurels, Cipollini appeared dressed in the sign-on in this peculiar way, a look that gave him so much popularity that he almost had more publicity than the winner of that day, who was no less than Lance Armstrong, sentencing his first Tour de France in the mountains. Psycho that day wore a white and gold jersey and broke UCI and Tour de France rules. They were sanctioned, but it didn't matter. The financial gain from Cipollini's images far outweighed the amount of the fine. And of course, that day, the Italian sprinter stopped pedalling, as he usually did on the first mountainous day of the Tour de France. That dream of arriving in Paris dressed in green was a fallacy. The only thing that he was there for was to clown around and become a green factory. So green, yes, but green for banknotes. And to win 4 stages in a row, we imagined that was with the same EPO with which he won the World Championships 3 years later, and another stage of the 1998 Tour de France.